February 5th, 1990. Inside a quiet apartment in Wilsonville, Oregon, 57-year-old Laverne Pavlinac stood alone in her kitchen, making coffee. These early hours, they were her escape, because for a brief moment each day, she had the apartment to herself. Her boyfriend, John Sosnovske, had already left for work at a nearby mill, and whenever he walked out that door, the tension lifted, the fear eased. In those moments, Laverne could pretend she was safe, but it was only ever a feeling, not reality, because John wasn't just difficult, he was violent, an alcoholic, and deeply abusive. For 10 years, Laverne had lived in that fear. She had once been married, but after her husband died of cancer, she met John during a time when she was vulnerable and alone. By the time she realized who he truly was, it was too late. She felt trapped. Leaving him wasn't just difficult, it felt dangerous. That morning, she sat down with her coffee and opened the newspaper. That's when everything changed. On the front page was a photograph, a young woman, smiling. Her name was Tanya Bennett. The article described her murder, brutal and cold. She had been beaten, strangled, and left along a highway northeast of Portland. As Laverne read, something unsettled her. The location sounded familiar, near a scenic overlook she had once visited. But it wasn't just the place, it was a feeling, a growing certainty. She stared at Tanya's photo, and suddenly it clicked. Laverne believed she knew who did it. John. Without hesitation, she stood up, grabbed the phone, and called the police. It was a risky move. If she was wrong, or if there wasn't enough evidence, John would come back home, and if he found out what she'd done, things could get worse, much worse. To Laverne, there were only two possible outcomes. Either John would be arrested for murder, or she might become the next victim. 11 days later, Detective John Ingram sat across from Laverne in her living room. He was leading the investigation into Tanya Bennett's murder. So far, the case had gone nowhere. No witnesses, no solid suspects, no useful forensic evidence. And now, one tip, from a nervous woman sitting right in front of him. "Tell me everything," Ingram said. At first, Laverne struggled to speak. Her hands trembled, her voice shook. But then, she began. She said that on the night of the murder, John came home unusually late, around 1 or 2 a.m., and immediately took a shower. That alone felt off, but the next day, things became clearer. At a local bar, she overheard John talking, bragging. He described picking up a woman at a truck stop, killing her, and dumping her body near the Columbia River Gorge, the same place Tanya had been found. For Detective Ingram, this was huge. A possible confession, and the details lined up. But it wasn't enough. He needed proof. So, with Laverne's permission, the detectives searched the apartment. At first, nothing stood out, until Ingram found a scrap of paper. On it were just a few handwritten words. T. Bennett, good pace. That was enough to bring John in for questioning. At the station, John appeared calm, too calm. When asked about Tanya, he claimed he didn't remember. When shown the note, he wasn't sure if he wrote it. Every answer was vague, non-committal, suspicious, but not incriminating. There still wasn't enough to arrest him, so he was released. Days later, Laverne called again. She said she had found something in her car, a small piece of denim. To investigators, this was significant. When Tanya's body was found, a piece of denim had been cut from her jeans, something the public didn't know. This could be the missing piece of evidence. But when the lab tested it, it wasn't a match. Now, everything changed. The evidence had to be planted, and that meant one thing. Laverne wasn't telling the full truth. When confronted, she broke down. At first, she admitted to planting the denim, but then, her story shifted again. This time, she told a much darker version. She claimed John had called her the night of the murder, that she went to meet him, and found Tanya still alive. According to Laverne, she helped him, helped move the body, and even participated in the final moments of the crime. Detective Ingram was stunned. This soft-spoken woman was now confessing to murder. But there was only one way to know if she was telling the truth. The next day, they drove with Laverne to the location where Tanya's body had been found. If she truly knew the crime scene, she would be able to point it out. They passed the spot once. Nothing. Then suddenly, "Turn around," she said. On the way back, she pointed directly to the exact location. It seemed convincing. Too convincing. Within days, both John and Laverne were arrested, both charged with murder, both eventually convicted, and both sentenced to life in prison. But the story didn't end there. Years passed, and something didn't sit right with Detective Ingram. There were inconsistencies, loose ends, a feeling that something had been missed. Then, in 1994, a letter arrived. A confession from someone else, the real killer, who was later known as the Happy Face Killer. Everything unraveled. Laverne had lied, not just a little, almost entirely. She had never witnessed the crime. She had never participated in it. Her entire story was fabricated. She had studied the case, picked up details, even guessed key elements correctly. All for one reason. She wanted out of her relationship, and she believed framing John for murder was the only way to escape him.